Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi 1 week at a time, Masechet Bava Kamma. This is our 6th lesson, and today we are going to be reviewing Daf 34 to 41. So Daf 34, we are discussing the value of the ox itself when it does damage. So the Gemara teaches that an ox valued at 200 zuz, that injures an ox also valued at 200 zuz. So then the damage is 50 zuz, and then the damage is 50 zuz. So then the injured ox increased its value to 400 instead of 800. So you have to pay half of damage at the time of the damage. So again, if the damage was 50, he owes 25, and therefore it doesn't matter that there's a change in the value of the damage since then. You only have to pay at the time of the accident. If the value of the ox went down by the time they go to court, then you pay damage at the time of the court case. Again, because we're going to be paying from the value of the animal. If the value of the damager's ox goes up, you pay according to the time of the injury. And if the value of the damager's ox goes down, you pay according to the time of the court case. Now there's a machloket, how we see the relationship between the damaged party and the damager, the mazik and the nizak. Do we see it as a creditor, meaning as soon as the damage happens, so then one owes the other? Or do we see them as partners and that they both own the damager's ox? And this will have a practical application. So if the damager fattened up his ox, the damaged party isn't entitled to the benefit of the increase in the value. But if the value went down, and this happens because of the injury, so then the damager does have to pay for that decrease in value. Okay, the next Mishnah tells us that an ox valued at 200 gores an ox valued at 200, and then the carcass is worth nothing. So then you sell the live ox and you split the money, right? Because he owes 100, so you sell the ox that is valued at 200, and then the damager keeps 100 and the damaged party gets 100. If the carcass is worth 50, so then you take the value of the living ox, and so you take half the value of the living ox and half the value of the carcass. So now the Gemara is going to explain. There's a machloket if they split the value of the dead ox or they divide the loss caused by the dead animal. The decrease of value of the carcass is the damaged party's liability, or maybe only half of the decrease in value is the damager's liability. The owner of the ox that gored pays for the damages, but never takes a share of the profits that happened through the damage, right? So if the carcass is worth more than the damage that was done, so the damager doesn't get that money. Everyone agrees that that the owner of the damaged animal is reimbursed for half of his loss through the sale of the live animal. Again, we said that he gets the value of, right, half the value of the live animal. Okay, next Mishnah tells us there are cases when one is liable or exempt for his ox, and cases where one is liable or exempt for damage that he caused himself. If an ox embarrasses someone, so then you're exempt from paying for that embarrassment, but you are liable if you embarrass someone through damage that you did. So you have to pay, if you remember, it's called boshet, right? You have to pay embarrassment. If the ox pokes out a slave's eye or tooth, so then the owner is exempt. But if a person does this, so then they're liable. If an ox hurts a person's parents, you are liable to pay. And if a person hurts one's own parents, so you don't pay, but that's not because you're not liable to pay, but because you're also liable for capital punishment. And we've learned this before, the concept of kimle midirabamene, which means that if you're liable for capital punishment and a monetary punishment, you only get capital punishment. You do not have to pay the monetary fine as well. If an ox ignites grain on Shabbat, so then the ox is liable. If a person does it, so then they're exempt, again, because they're liable for transgressing Shabbat, and that is what they're going to be punished for. So now the Gemara explains the Mishnah. If the act is constructive, so then you're liable for transgressing Shabbat. And if you remember from Masechet Shabbat, it was a long time ago, but if you remember, we talked about positive or constructive actions. That's considered a transgression in the laws of Shabbat. But if it's a destructive act, so then you are exempt from transgressing on Shabbat. Or maybe you are even liable even if you do destroy something. Our Mishnah implies that the ox is similar to the person, only if it's constructive, right? And then the Gemara asks, how do we have that case? So the case is that you have a very smart ox, and it decides to do things because it needs them, not because it's trying to destroy things. So now we're on Daf 35. If the ox intended to damage someone, so then you're liable, but exempt for embarrassment, for boshet, as we said before. There's no difference if a person kills an animal on purpose or by accident. You still need to pay for the damage. If they did it on Shabbat, so then you're exempt from payment because, again, you are liable for capital punishment. Again, you're not allowed to kill a person or an animal on Shabbat. I mean, you're not allowed to kill a person ever, but if you do it on Shabbat, you are, sorry, we're not talking about killing a person. We're talking about killing an animal. And if you did it on purpose or by accident, you're liable for it, even on Shabbat. Okay. The next Mishnah. If one ox chases another ox, and then they run away, we don't see what happens. And then you find them, and one is damaged when you find them. So the owner says, your ox did this, right? We saw them chasing each other. And the other one says, no, your ox fell on a rock. I don't know that it was my ox that did it. So the burden of proof is on the damaged party. This is an important principle in the Gemara. In Hebrew, the principle is hamotzi michavero alav hara'aya. The person who wants to get paid has the burden of proof. So the damaged party is the one who has to prove that the other ox caused the damage and not that his ox tripped on a rock. Let's say you have two ox who are chasing, two oxen are now chasing a third one, right? So 2 against 1. Each one can say, right? Basically, the owner of each one can say, oh, my ox didn't do this issue, right? My ox didn't hurt your ox. It was the other guy's ox, right? And if they were both owned by the same person, so then they're both liable. The Gemara is going to explain what both liable means. If one ox was small and one ox was big, again, it's chasing, 2 of them are chasing one, and they're owned by a person. So the same person. So then the damaged party says, oh, it was the bigger ox that did the damage. Again, the bigger the damager, the more money the damaged party can get. So he wants it to be the bigger one's fault. And the owner says, no, it was the small one who did the damage, right? Or if one of the oxen is tam, right, is not forewarned, and the other one is muad, the damaged one says the muad did it, because if it was the warned one, then he pays full damages. And then the damager says, no, it was the tam one, and then he would only have to pay half. Again, the burden of proof is on the damaged party. Let's say 2 oxen chase another 2. So again, let's say 2 are small and 2 are big. Or again, one is tam and one is muad. We don't know who caused the problem in the end. Okay, so now the Gemara explains. Sumku says that in an uncertain case, right, when we have a safek, when we're uncertain, so you split the money. The sages say, no, you don't split the money. That's not how it works. So now we have, a concept of one person being sure. That's called bari, as opposed to shema, we're not sure, right? Maybe there's a doubt versus for sure. So the Gemara tells us that if each one says, I'm sure that this is what happened, so then you split it according to Sumkus. If a person doesn't bring proof, so it seems that the Mishnah says he gets the lower value, right? Maybe the case is that one person says it's for sure, and the other one says they're not so sure. The damaged says maybe, and the damager says, oh, for sure, this is what happens. So Sumku says you don't split it in that case. Or maybe we flip who said for sure and who said maybe, or maybe it doesn't matter which one said which. If he says, right, your big ox is the one who did the damage, that implies that the small one did it. And then he doesn't get any money, but if he takes the money himself, so then the court doesn't take it away from him. Daf 36 tells us that if both of the oxen were muad, right, were forewarned, the damaged party can collect from either one of the animals. Or the Gemara says, no, the Mishnah is speaking about a tam ox, again, where you only pay half of the value of the damaged. According to Rabbi Akiva, again, remember we said in the beginning, what is the nature of the relationship between the mazik and the nizak, right? The damager and the damaged. Rabbi Akiva says that they're like partners. So if they're partners, so then that affects who owes who, right? If one of them gets lost, so he doesn't have to pay because maybe it's the one who did the damage and that's the one that he needed to pay for, and therefore no one gets any money. And with that, we finish the 3rd chapter of Bava Kamma. Okay, let's go on to the 4th chapter. So the Mishnah says, this chapter is going to talk about how the animal becomes muad, right? How it becomes forewarned. So let's say an ox gores 4 or 5 oxen, right? So basically it sees an ox in between and it didn't gore it, right? So basically it gores an ox, then it sees an ox and it doesn't gore, then it sees another ox and it does gore. So the Gemara says this is still seen as a tam animal, and you pay for the last one first. If there's extra money, so then you pay for the second to last, and then the third, and then you go earlier and earlier. You pay the second to last one, etc. If the ox is worth 200, gores an ox that's also worth 200, and the carcass is worthless, each person takes 100, as we said before. If it gores another ox that's worth 100. So then the last one gets 100. Again, he pays half because it's tam. So the damage was 200. He pays 100. And then, now again, the ox itself is worth 200. So the last ox, he gets paid 100. So now we have another 100 left. So then the second to last one, right, basically the first one that he gored, he gets only 50 because it's half of what's left of the value of the ox. And then the owner of the ox gets another 50. So if it gores again, so we're going to do the same thing again. The last one gets 100. We're starting from the beginning. The last one gets 100. The second to last one gets 50. And then the first one gets 25. So basically, we go backwards and you start from the last one who's owed the money and you work forward towards, or you work backwards towards the first animal that was injured. So now the Gemara is going to explain. This is not like a creditor. Because if you have a creditor, right, if I borrow money from you and then I go and borrow money from another person, then I go borrow money from another person, I pay back the first loan first, not the last loan first. But it's also not like partners, because if you're partners, again, the first one would also get reimbursed first. So the Gemara says everyone before is also liable to pay the next person, meaning they're all seen as owners of this ox. And that's why we're going to pay the last person first, and then whatever money is left, we're going to divide it. In the case where there are 3 oxen damaged, so then we said you pay the last one 100, second to last one 50, and the first one 25. And this is like Rabbi Akiva because it shows that they're all partners in the payment. So now, the Gemara talks about this idea of partners versus creditors. Daf 37 tells us that a court can represent others for their benefit, meaning if they are going to get benefit, so then the court can represent them. The next Mishnah tells us an ox is muad, it's forewarned if it gores ox, right? So if it gores 3 ox, in a row, so then it becomes muad for ox. If it is, right, let's say it's muad for people, right? It gored 3 people, it's muad only for people, but not for animals, right? If it only, let's say it only attacked big animals, so then it's muad for big animals, but not small ones. And we said that you pay full if it's muad, right? If it's already forewarned, and you pay half of the damage for tam, right? For any other damage. And now the Mishnah explains that an animal can be mu'ad based on time, right? An animal can be mu'ad for Shabbat, but not for during the week, right? So meaning this animal gores 3 times on Shabbat, but during the week it doesn't gore at all. So if it gores on Shabbat, you have to pay full damages. If it gores an animal during the week, so then it's still tam and you only pay half the damages. If it doesn't gore 3 times in a row on Shabbat, so then it goes back to being tam also for Shabbat, meaning you can get out of the mu'ad mu'ad status, right? You can take it away if 3 times it could have gored in that status, but it didn't. Okay. So now the Gemara explains. If you know for sure that it isn't mu'ad for the other type, then it's tam. Meaning, how do we understand tam and mu'ad? Is it that, like, this animal only gores big animals, but not small ones? Therefore, right, every time it passes a small animal, it doesn't do anything. Okay, so then we know for sure that it's mu'ad for big animals and tam for small animals. Or maybe we don't know, right? Meaning it only gored big animals, but we don't know what it would do for a small animal. So then maybe it's also mu'ad for small animals because we don't know what it's going to do. If it's mu'ad for people and animals, and then it didn't gore any animals 3 times in a row, so then it becomes tam for animals, but it stays mu'ad for people. So you see how the status can change. Sumku says, if it's mu'ad for people, isn't it automatically mu'ad for animals? Meaning, if it isn't scared of people, then why would it be scared of animals, right? People are scarier than animals. Or maybe we're discussing how to become tam again, meaning if it didn't gore any animals, it doesn't prove that it isn't mu'ad for people, right? Again, an animal that attacks other animals is different than an animal who then it's different than an animal who attacks animals. Again, animals and people are very different. If it gored an ox, if it gored an ox, and then it gored a donkey, and then it gored a camel, right? So it gores 3 times, but 3 different animals. It becomes mu'ad for all these 3 animals. If it saw an ox and it gored it, and then it saw an ox and it didn't, and then it saw an ox and it gored it, and then it saw an ox and it didn't, right? Basically alternating 3 times in a row. So then it becomes mu'ad for alternate oxen, right? Meaning there's this idea, I don't know how, right? But only ox 1, 3, 5, and 7 are in danger, but 2, 4, 6, 8 are fine. Okay, so this is called serugin, right? Every other. Okay, so let's say it gores 3 Shabbatot in a row. So now we have a case, 3 Shabbatot in a row, and then it gores after that last Shabbat, then it gores on Sunday and on Monday. So the question is, it did Shabbat 3 times in a row, but it only did 2 weekdays. Or do we look at the last Shabbat and then it does Shabbos, Sunday, Monday? So then that is all the days of the week, right? Shabbat, Sunday, Monday. So maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's also Mu'ad. Let's say it gored Thursday, Friday, Shabbat, Shabbat. So again, is it Mu'ad for all the days of the week because we have Thursday, Friday, Shabbat? Or because it did Shabbat, it's only Mu'ad for Shabbat? And the answer is Teku. We are not sure what the answer is. We wait for Eliyahu to teach us. Let's say gored on the 15th of this month and the 16th of the next month, and then the 17th of the next month. So again, do we say that now it's Mu'ad only on one day a month, but that day changes every month? And let's say it heard a shofar and then it gored 3 times, it becomes mu'ad for hearing a shofar because that's going to cause it to attack. Okay, next Mishnah. An ox owned by a person gored an ox of hekdesh, meaning an ox that was sanctified, that was owned by the temple treasury, or vice versa, that the ox of the temple treasury gored the ox of a regular person. So then they're both exempt because the Torah tells us it needs to be the ox of your friend. And here it's not the ox of your friend, it's the ox of the temple. Let's say an ox owned by a Jew gores an ox owned by a non-Jew. So then you're exempt from paying. But the opposite case, the non-Jew needs to pay full damages. So now the Gemara explains. Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya said that if an ox of a person gores the temple's ox, so then you do have to pay full damage. So now the question is, wait a minute, why not half? If a shortam damages another person's ox, so then you pay half. But if it's the temple's ox, so then you have to pay full. Daf 38 tells us that because so now the question is, what is this distinction with the non-Jews versus the Jews? So Daf 38 tells us that because the nations that lived in Israel, the Canaanim, they didn't keep the 7 Noahide laws, right? The Sheva Mitzvot B'nei Noach, right? These are the 7 laws that everybody needs to keep, right? Having a system of law, not worshiping idols, not having sexual immorality, murder, blasphemy, thievery, or eating raw meat that was just pulled off of an animal. So those are the 7 laws. Because they didn't keep these laws, so then if their ox gores, they need to pay full, right? This is a way of, I guess, punishing them for not keeping the basic laws of humanity. Right? Hashem saw that they weren't keeping the mitzvot, therefore he released them from their money. Okay. Another teaching says that if non-Jews learn Torah, they are rewarded, but not like someone who is obligated. This is a very fundamental principle in the Gemara. In Hebrew, the principle is Gadol hamitzuveh ve'oseh mimi she'eino mitzuveh ve'oseh, meaning a person who is commanded to do something, when they do it, their reward is greater than someone who does it without being commanded. This seems to be a little counterintuitive, right? One would think that if we volunteer for something, we should get rewarded more. The Gemara looks at it more from human nature, right? If I volunteer to do something, so I want to do it, so it's easier for me. If I'm obligated to do it, so then I less want to do it, right? When our mothers used to tell us to clean our room, that's when you really don't want to clean your room. Here, if a non-Jew learns Torah, they do get some reward, but not the same as a Jew who is obligated to do it. There's a story of Roman officers who were sent to learn Jewish law, and they said that it was all truth. They understood it, except for the fact that a non-Jew needs to pay full if his ox gores a Jewish ox. They said that they wouldn't report this law back to Rome because they didn't want the Jews to get in trouble. Okay. All right. There's a story now of Ula, who goes to console Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda on the loss of his daughter. And he speaks about God saving the nations of Ammon and Moab because of Ruth and Naomi, right? Basically, God saw that these 2 nations were going to have the product of these 2 nations were going to be Ruth and Naamah. Sorry, I said Naomi before. I meant Naamah, who's the wife of Shlomo. Excuse me. They came from Moab and Ammon, respectively. And the fact that and Hashem spared the entire nation because he saw that these 2 women were going to come from this nation. Ula seemed to have been implying that the fact that Hashem took Rav Shmuel's daughter means that she already fulfilled her mission in this world. Though in parentheses, one should not say these things to mourners. It is not something that seems to be very comforting, but it was said nonetheless. From here, since we're talking about Ammon and Moab, who come from Lot and his daughters, The Gemara tells us that Hashem rewards all creatures, even for small acts, right? Like kind speech, right? And if we speak kindly, right, this is learned from the daughters of Lot, that the daughter who named her child Ammon, it wasn't as clear that she slept with her father, and the nation is rewarded for this. The Gemara continues and says you should always try to do a mitzvah as quickly as possible and be the first to do it. Okay, back to our oxen. If an ox gores a Kuti's ox, again, the Kutim were a nation that lived in Israel, and they converted. We see throughout the Talmud, some people see them as Jews, meaning it was a proper conversion. Others see it as not a proper conversion, and still see them as non-Jews. So if an ox gores a Kuti's ox, you're exempt. If it's the other way, so then they pay half for Tam and full for Muad, or maybe they pay full in both cases. Again, here it seems that they hold that the Kutim were really non-Jews. As I said, there's a machloket if we see them as true converts or not. Okay, Daf 39, the Mishnah tells us, if an ox gores an ox owned by a deaf mute or someone who's insane or a minor, right? Cheresh shotet the katan. This is a group of people that don't have cognitive ability, and therefore, so again, if the ox gores an ox that was owned by these people, you are liable to pay. But if it's the opposite, then they're exempt because they couldn't watch the ox because they don't have the mental capacity to do so. The Mishnah continues that if the ox of a Charesh, Shotet, and Katan gores, right, again, the deaf mute, the insane, and the minor, if it gores, so then the court appoints an agent to watch over the ox because clearly they cannot watch over the ox, and testimony is given in front of this agent. Okay, if the person can hear now, right, can now hear, right, they change their status, or they become sane, or they grow up and they become adults, not if, but when they grow up and become adults, the ox becomes tam, meaning we're going to see that when there's a change in ownership between the agent and then this person, so then the status changes back to tam. Well, we'll see, it's a machloket, right? Or maybe it remains muad. An ox that worked in the arena, here we're talking about bullfighting, and it killed a person in the arena, you're exempt from killing that ox because it was forced to do it, right? It was just his job, and therefore we do not kill the ox. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to explain. The Mishnah means that if it's tam, so then the Cheresh, Shotet, and Katan are exempt from paying. But if it was Muad, so then we appoint an agent, and if it does it again, then they need to pay. Orphans need to pay damages, or maybe the agent needs to pay, right? Again, who pays for the damage? The owners or the agent? But the Gemara says, wait a minute, we learned that we don't take money from the orphans to pay for damages. We only take money to pay for loans. So what does it mean? Sorry, so what does it mean that they pay? So the Gemara says, no, you're right. The agent pays for the damage, but then he collects from the orphans when they become adults. Again, because otherwise the agent would never want to be an agent if he's going to be liable to pay for the damage. There's a machloket if the court appoints the agent when the owner is Cheresh or Shoteh or overseas. Do they appoint it to make the ox tam, and then they need to pay half the damages from the body, or maybe it's only done to make the ox muad, right? Again, forewarned. If the owner becomes competent, there's a machloket if it changes its status. Okay, there is an opinion that says that if a cheresh, shoteh, or katan person minimally guard a muad ox, so instead of superior guarding, so then he pays half of the damage because he did guard the animal, but only a minimal amount and not the higher amount. Okay, or maybe the case is that it was a muad animal, but he didn't guard it at all, and then they only appoint the agent for this muad animal, and you only pay half of the muad, but not half for a tam. Okay, Daf 40 teaches us that an agent pays from land, but doesn't have to pay kofer, right? Again, kofer means is the payment that the owner makes if his ox kills a person. So we'll see that and we've seen before, the kofer payment is atonement for the owner. Therefore, the agent doesn't pay kofer because he doesn't need atonement. And orphans, again, who are minors, don't need atonement either, again, because they're minors and they are not obligated in this commandment. There's a machloket what the kofer payment is. Again, as I mentioned, right? Is it the value of the damaged party? Therefore, it's a monetary reimbursement, or is it the value of the damager? And therefore, it's about atonement and not about paying back damage. Or everyone agrees that it's for atonement of the damager, but they argue what value he pays, his own value or the value of the damaged party. Okay, an ox owned by two people, what do they pay? So the Gemara says, we're not sure. Let's say Reuven borrowed an ox and thought that it was tam, but it really was muad. So then each one has to pay half, meaning Reuven thought it was tam, so he pays half the value of the damage, and Shimon, the owner, pays the other half. If it becomes muad in the borrower's domain, so then the owner pays half and the borrower pays nothing because he didn't know he didn't know anything about this animal and its tendencies. Okay, so if the borrower realizes that it has a goring nature, then it has to pay, but not more than the tam payment, which was half. Or the court took the ox to use for payment. Therefore, the borrower and the owner need to both pay. Therefore, they each pay half. Okay. If, again, we said, if it becomes muad in someone else's domain, so then he doesn't have to pay, right? So if it changed domains, it changes status. Therefore, you only have to pay half. And then the owner can say, you can't make my ox muad. You didn't watch it properly. It's your fault. Okay. So now, as we said, that the stadium ox who was forced to kill, can that animal be brought as a korban, as a sacrifice? So one answer is yes, because it didn't do it on purpose. It was forced. Or maybe the answer is no, because it still did kill in the arena. Okay, the Gemara continues. All animals that were used for sins, right, for idolatry, for some sexual act, or if it killed someone, you can't use it for sacrifices. Now, again, if it kills an animal either by accident or because it wasn't its fault, so we don't kill it, but you still can't use it as a for a sacrifice, or maybe, as we said before, it can be used as a sacrifice. Okay, Daf 41. The Mishnah says, if an ox gorged and killed a person, if it was muad, so you pay kofer, right? You pay a certain amount. If it was tam, you do not pay kofer. But both the ox that is tam or muad, they are liable to death and they are stoned. This is what's called in the Torah shor haniskal, the stoned ox, right? This is an ox that gets stoned. He gets put to death because he killed a person, whether it was it was tam, whether it was innocent, or it already was forewarned. Also, if the victim was a minor, it doesn't matter if the victim was an adult or a minor. If it killed a slave, you pay 30 slaim or 30 shekel to the owner, no matter the worth of the slave. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to explain. How can the ox be muad if you kill it the first time it kills a person, right? If it kills a person 3 times, then it becomes muad, but if it kills it the first time, you kill it. So what's the case? It charged at 3 people, right? It tried to gore and kill 3 times, but they ran away, and therefore it didn't kill anybody, or maybe it injured 3 people in a very severe way, and they didn't have time. Not they didn't have time, but they didn't die just yet, and then it goes and kills someone, so then it becomes mu'ad. Or let's say it kills 3 animals, or maybe it killed 3 non-Jews. This is interesting. The Gemara says that if it kills 3 non-Jews, it doesn't become mu'ad or forewarned for Jews. And what's the case? It's not that there's a different status between non-Jews and Jews. Rather, the Gemara says that Jews, or the commentators say that Jews have greater divine protection. God watches over the Jews, and therefore it's harder to kill the Jews. And therefore, if the ox gores non-Jews, it doesn't mean that he can necessarily gore Jews, which is a very interesting concept. Okay, the Gemara cites different scenarios where the ox killed, but it wasn't put to death. But the owner needs to know about these cases in order to make it mu'ad. And the owner, right, when the owner knows that it's mu'ad, so then the owner can guard the ox in a proper way. After the verdict against the ox comes out, so then you're not allowed to get any benefit from this animal, meaning you can't eat it, and we'll see what else. So the Gemara thinks, well, maybe, right, it's supposed to be stoned. What if you slaughter it, you shecht it before it gets stoned? Maybe you can eat the meat. The Gemara says no. When the Torah says you can't eat something, it also includes not only can you not eat it, but you can't get benefit from it. And if you shecht it, you still can't eat it, as opposed to a nevela. Nevela is an animal that gets killed in any way that's not ritual slaughter. If right, an animal that's a nevela, so you're not allowed to eat it, but you can get benefit from it, as opposed to shor haniskal, this ox that is going to get killed, you may not get benefit from it as well. You might have thought that if you shecht it maybe with a sharp stone, right? So you kill it with a sharp stone, maybe that's called stoning the animal. So that might not be valid, but maybe if you used a knife, maybe you could eat it. So the Gemara says, no, all shchita is the same and all of it is forbidden. Okay, the Torah tells us that the owner of the ox will be like exempt or will be clean. In Hebrew, it says Bal Hashor Naki, right? Naki really means clean, but it means like exempt from everything. So we're going to see what this means. What does it mean, Naki? So one explanation is that it teaches that you can't even benefit from the hide, meaning the owner doesn't get anything, right? Not the food, not any benefit, even the hide. And here the Gemara tells of Rabbi Shimon, who would expound all the words et, right? Et means and or of. Every time it says et in the Torah, Rabbi Shimon would expound it till, right, explain why it says et, till he got to the pasuk of et Hashem Elokecha tira, right? God, you should fear God, your God, but he wasn't sure what that's coming to include, so therefore he withdrew all of his explanations of the word et. When Rabbi Akiva came along, he actually explained this et as what is it coming to include? That you have to fear God. What else can you fear? So Rabbi Akiva says you also need to fear the teachers of Torah, and therefore it comes to include teachers of Torah. The Tam owner doesn't pay half kofar. Remember, we said if the ox was Muad, so then you pay kofar. You pay this monetary payment or penalty. If the ox was tam, so then we said that you're exempt. You might have thought that you pay half kofar, but the Gemara says no, you don't pay half a kofar. But if the owner admits to the killing, you also don't pay kofar. Okay, so with that, we are finishing our lesson for today. I wanted to tell you that next week I'm actually going to be traveling, and it's going to be a little difficult for me to give this class. So I'm going to review next week's Gemara on Sunday, meaning in a week and a few days, I guess in a week and a half. I'm going to review from this week, Thursday, to next Thursday's daf, and then we'll have regular class on Wednesday, which will again review from Thursday to Wednesday. Meaning we're going to cover all the dafim, but it's going to be not on our usual night. So I'll send an email again next week, but next week there's not going to be class, and then the following week we'll have two classes, one on Sunday and then one on Wednesday. And of course, if you can't make it, the class will be recorded and you can watch it at your leisure. Wishing everyone a Chanukah Sameach, last day of Chanukah. Wishing everyone a Chanukah Sameach and a Shabbat Shalom, and see you in a week and a half.
Have a safe trip.